The grand chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled like a sea of stars. Thousands of crystalline lights floated near the high ceiling, casting a soft glow over the gathered representatives of 300 spacefaring civilizations. Admiral James Reed stood at the center of the circular platform, his weathered face showing no emotion as laughter echoed through the vast space. Seventh dimensional travel. The head counselor's voice boomed across the chamber, his blue-skinned face wrinkled with amusement. Your species barely mastered basic spaceflight a century ago. You can't expect us to believe you've achieved what even the oldest civilizations consider theoretical. More laughter followed. Reed's grip tightened on the podium, his knuckles turning white. But his voice remained steady. Earth requests recognition of our breakthrough and seeks to share this technology with the Council. In the front row, the Arcturian delegation whispered among themselves. Their silver robes shimmed as they moved, their four eyes blinking in perfect synchronization. They were the current leaders in dimensional travel technology, having mastered sixth-dimensional ships nearly a millennium ago. Perhaps, the Arcturian ambassador spoke, her melodic voice carrying a hint of mockery. The humans have confused their dimensions again. After all, they still teach their young using physical models and drawings. This brought another wave of laughter from the assembly. Reed's jaw clenched. He remembered Dr. Thompson's words before he left Earth. Let them laugh. They don't understand that their greatest weakness is their certainty. He straightened his back and waited for the laughter to die down. Back on Earth, in the hidden facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Anna Thompson watched the transmission with her team. The massive screen showed Reed facing the ridicule with dignity. She turned away from the screen and looked through the reinforced glass window at their creation. The Prometheus hung in the massive underground chamber, its hull unlike anything humanity had built before. The ship's surface seemed to shift and flow, as if it couldn't quite decide which dimension it wanted to exist in. Equations that had come to Thompson in dreams now lived in every curve and angle of the vessel. They're all so certain we'll fail, Marcus Gray said, stepping up beside her. The intelligence officer had been the first to support their project, fighting through years of bureaucracy to keep it funded. Just like they were certain we'd never crack sixth-dimensional math. Thompson smiled, remembering how the aliens had shared just enough of their dimensional travel technology to prove how far ahead they were. They hadn't expected humans to take those crumbs and build something entirely new from them. Certainty is the enemy of discovery, she replied, running her hand over the control panel. The ship's systems hummed in response, like a living thing eager to prove itself. How much longer will the Admiral have to endure their mockery? Protocol requires him to stay for the full session, Gray answered, checking his tablet. 6 more hours of being laughed at by beings who think they know everything about dimensional physics. Thompson nodded and turned back to her work. On her screen, complex equations danced and shifted, showing possibilities that the alien races had never considered. They thought dimensional travel was all about complex mathematics and advanced technology. They never considered that consciousness itself might be the key to navigating higher dimensions. In the council chamber, Reed endured another round of questions clearly designed to mock rather than understand. He thought about the Prometheus and its crew, already preparing for their first official flight. Let the aliens laugh. Soon, they would understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in copying what others had done, but in finding entirely new ways to solve problems. We thank the Council for their attention, Reed said finally, his voice carrying a hint of steel. Earth looks forward to demonstrating our achievement in the near future. As he stepped down from the platform, the laughter followed him. But Reed smiled slightly, knowing that soon, very soon, that laughter would stop. Because while the Council wasted time mocking humanity's claims, the Prometheus was about to change everything they thought they knew about dimensional travel. The mockery would end, and humanity would finally take its rightful place among the stars. 5 years earlier, Dr. Anna Thompson sat alone in her lab, staring at an experiment that shouldn't have worked. The quantum particles on her screen were behaving impossibly, refusing to follow the rules that even alien science held sacred. It was 3 in the morning, and she had been about to shut down the lab when everything changed. The particles weren't just entangled. They were dancing through dimensions as if the barriers between them didn't exist. Thompson grabbed her coffee, now cold, and took another sip. Her hands shook with excitement as she watched the data stream across multiple screens. "Computer, run it again," she commanded, her voice hoarse from too many hours without sleep. This was the 47th test tonight, and each one showed the same impossible result. The particles weren't just moving through space, they were folding through dimensions like paper through paper. The door to her lab opened with a soft hiss. "Doctor, you missed the staff meeting again," Marcus Gray said, walking in with fresh coffee and a concerned look. He stopped when he saw her face. "You found something." Thompson didn't look away from her screens. "They were all wrong, Marcus. The aliens, our scientists, everyone." She pointed to the dancing particles. "Look at how they move. It's not about complex math or advanced technology. It's about understanding how consciousness affects dimensional space." Gray set down the coffee and leaned in closer. Unlike most military intelligence officers, he had a background in quantum physics. His eyes widened as he watched the particle movements. "That's impossible," the Arcturians said. "The Arcturians are stuck in their way of thinking." Thompson interrupted. "They see dimensions as layers to break through. But look, really look at how these particles move when exposed to conscious observation." She pulled up another screen showing brainwave patterns. When we think about higher dimensions, our minds naturally try to fold space in our imagination. The aliens think this is primitive, just our limited brains trying to understand something too complex for us. But what if our primitive way of thinking is actually the key? Gray watched as she overlaid the brainwave patterns with the particle movements. They matched perfectly. "You're saying our human consciousness naturally understands how to fold through dimensions." "Better than that," Thompson smiled, pulling up a third screen. "I'm saying we can use this understanding to build something new. Not a ship that forces its way through dimensional barriers, but one that folds through them naturally." Her fingers flew over the keyboard, bringing up designs that looked nothing like conventional spacecraft. "The aliens shared just enough of their technology to make us feel small," she continued. "They gave us glimpses of sixth-dimensional travel to show us how far behind we are. But they never considered that we might find a completely different path." Gray sat down heavily in a spare chair. "This is why you requested those strange materials last month. You're already building a prototype." Thompson nodded, bringing up more designs. "A small one, yes. Traditional ships try to punch through dimensions with brute force. This design," she gestured to the elegant curves on her screen, "this works with space instead of against it. Like folding paper instead of tearing it." "The Council will never accept this," Gray warned, but his eyes were bright with excitement. "They'll say it's impossible, that we're too primitive to have made such a discovery. Then we'll prove it to them." Thompson stood up, walking to a sealed door at the back of her lab. It opened to reveal a small chamber where a model the size of a basketball floated in midair. Its surface seemed to shift and change as they watched, never quite settling into a fixed shape. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. "We'll build bigger, better, and when we're done, we won't need their approval or their technology. We'll show them that sometimes the best way forward is to think like a primitive species." Gray stared at the floating model, already imagining the possibilities. "How long until we can build a full-sized ship?" "With proper funding and support." Thompson smiled, her eyes never leaving her creation. 5 years, maybe less. And then we'll show the galaxy what human innovation really means." The model continued to shift and dance in its chamber, its movement exactly matching the patterns of the quantum particles on Thompson's screens. It was beautiful, impossible, and completely human. 10 years ago, humanity had looked up at the stars with hope and wonder. When the first alien ships appeared over major cities, people celebrated in the streets. Finally, they weren't alone in the universe. But Admiral James Reed remembered how quickly that wonder turned to disappointment. He sat in his office at Earth Defense Command, looking at old footage from that day. On the screen, the Arcturian ships hung in the sky like silver jewels. Beautiful, yes, but now he could see the arrogance in how they positioned themselves, high above Earth's tallest buildings, looking down on humanity literally and figuratively. Play the first meeting recording, Reed commanded his computer. The screen changed to show the United Nations Assembly. Earth's leaders sat on one side, the alien delegation on the other. The aliens wore their elaborate robes and advanced tech, like badges of honor. "Your species has potential," the Arcturian ambassador had said, her voice dripping with false kindness. "With proper guidance, you might achieve spaceflight beyond your solar system in mere centuries instead of millennia." Reed closed his eyes, remembering the anger he'd felt that day. Humanity had already reached Mars, had bases on the moon. Yet the aliens spoke to them like children who had just discovered fire. The door chimed, and Marcus Gray walked in. "Still torturing yourself with old recordings?" he asked, setting down a thick folder on Reed's desk. "Reminding myself why we need to succeed," Reed corrected. He pointed to the screen where an alien scientist was explaining basic space travel to a group of human experts, as if they were kindergarten students. "They never saw us as equals. Not even close." Gray nodded, opening his folder. "Look at these, the basic technology they shared with us." He spread out several documents showing alien engine designs and power systems. They thought they were being generous, showing us simplified versions of their tech. Instead, they gave us pieces of a puzzle we could solve our own way, Reed said, picking up one of the documents. "They never expected us to look at their sixth-dimensional drives and think, we can do better than this." The screen continued playing, showing more meetings over the years. Each time, the aliens brought new gifts, outdated technology they considered safe to share with primitives. They opened limited trade, allowed a few human ships to visit nearby systems, but always with strict supervision. "Playing nice with us while keeping us in our place," Gray muttered. "Remember when they patted us on the head for figuring out better fusion reactors? Like we were clever pets." Reed stood up and walked to his window. From here, he could see the sprawling Earth Defense Command complex. Buildings that mixed human innovation with alien technology, but always under restrictions, always with limits. "They gave us just enough to make us dependent," he said. "Just enough to make us think we needed their guidance and approval." He turned back to Gray. "Have you seen the latest reports from Dr. Thompson's team?" Gray smiled, pulling out another document. "The Prometheus is exceeding all expectations in tests. The alien sensors can't even detect how it moves through dimensional space. They literally can't understand what we've built." "Because they never thought we could," Reed said, taking the report. "They were so busy teaching us their way of doing things, they never considered we might find a better way." On the screen, another recording played, a recent one, an Arcturian scientist explaining why humans weren't ready for dimensional travel technology. "Your minds are too simple," she said. "You cannot grasp the complexities involved. Be patient. In a few hundred years, perhaps." Reed turned off the screen. "They think they're protecting us from technology we're not ready for. Really, they're protecting themselves from the competition." He looked at the Prometheus test results again. "Well, they're about to learn that humanity doesn't need their protection or their permission." Gray gathered his documents, leaving one final report on the desk. "The Prometheus launches in 2 days. Should I inform the Council?" "No," Reed said, a small smile forming on his face. "Let them keep thinking we're just simple primitives playing with toys they gave us. The look on their faces when they realize how wrong they were." He paused, remembering all the condescending speeches and patronizing lessons. "That will be worth every moment of humiliation we've endured." Outside his window, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the command complex. Somewhere out there, humanity's future was taking shape, and soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that underestimating humans was a serious mistake. The underground launch facility hummed with nervous energy. Dr. Thompson stood before the Prometheus, its strange surface reflecting the bright lights of the chamber. In just 1 hour, they would prove everything, or fail spectacularly in front of the gathered alien observers. Final systems check complete. A technician called out from his station. All readings are green. Thompson touched the ship's hull one last time before walking to the control center. The viewing gallery above was filled with alien diplomats and scientists, their expressions ranging from amused to concerned. They had come to witness what they assumed would be humanity's latest failure. Admiral Reed waited by the main console, already dressed in his flight suit. "Engineering team reports ready," he said, checking his tablet. "Life support systems are functioning perfectly." He looked up at the gallery. "Our guests seem entertained. They think we're about to blow ourselves up," Thompson replied, starting her pre-launch sequence. The ship's unique engines began their warm-up cycle, creating patterns of light that danced across its surface. Several alien observers leaned forward, their expressions changing from amusement to confusion. "They can't read our energy signatures," Marcus Gray said, joining them at the console. "Their sensors are designed for conventional dimensional drives. The Prometheus might as well be invisible to them." The launch countdown began. Thompson felt her heart racing as she watched the numbers tick down. Everything they'd worked for came down to this moment. The alien observers muttered among themselves as the ship's surface began to ripple like water in the wind. T-minus 10 minutes, the computer announced. "All personnel clear the launch chamber." Reed turned to his small crew. "Just 4 people for this first flight." "Time to board," he said. "Dr. Thompson, after you. This is your creation, after all." They walked across the boarding bridge together. Thompson couldn't help but notice how the alien observers had fallen silent, watching their every move. The ship's entrance opened smoothly, revealing an interior that seemed to shift and change even as they looked at it. "Remarkable design," one of the alien scientists said, loud enough to be heard. "Completely wrong, of course, but remarkable for their level of development." Thompson smiled as she strapped herself into her station. The interior of the Prometheus responded to their presence, displays coming to life with information that flowed like water across curved screens. This was what the aliens couldn't understand. Technology that worked with human consciousness instead of fighting against it. T-minus 5 minutes, the computer announced. "Engine core temperature nominal. Dimensional fold generators online." Reed took his command position, while 2 other crew members, Dr. John Miller and Lieutenant Lisa Parker, secured themselves at their stations. The ship hummed around them, almost eager to prove itself. "Interesting," another alien voice carried from above. "They actually believe they've created a 7th dimensional drive. Should we stop them before they harm themselves?" T-minus 1 minute, the computer continued, ignorant of the doubters above. Final launch sequence initiated. Thompson's fingers flew across her controls, feeling the ship respond to each command like an extension of her own body. This was what the aliens had missed. The human mind could naturally understand dimensional folding in ways their rigid mathematics never could. 10 seconds, Reed announced. "Dr. Thompson, whenever you're ready." The ship's surface began to ripple faster, reality itself seeming to bend around it. In the gallery, alien sensors sparked and died, unable to process what they were seeing. "Launch," Thompson said quietly, pressing her hand to the main control panel. The Prometheus didn't roar like a conventional rocket. Instead, it seemed to gather light around itself, bending space in ways that made the alien observers step back in alarm. For a moment, the ship existed in multiple dimensions at once, its form impossible to track with normal vision. Then, with a soft sound like a gentle wave breaking on a beach, it vanished. The launch chamber fell silent. On their monitors, they could see the Prometheus appearing in high orbit, having bypassed all conventional space in between. It hung there, proud and impossible, while alien sensors across the solar system tried and failed to understand what they were seeing. From their station, deep underground, Gray and his team began receiving the first telemetry. "All systems normal," he announced to the stunned gallery above. "Dimensional fold successful. The Prometheus has achieved stable 7th-dimensional flight capability." The aliens weren't laughing anymore. Inside the Prometheus, reality wasn't what it used to be. Dr. Thompson watched in awe as normal space folded around them like pages in a book. Through the ship's special viewing panels, they could see dimensions stacked upon dimensions, each one as clear as glass. "This is..." Lieutenant Parker struggled to find words. "It's beautiful." The crew floated in their seats, held in place by safety fields as conventional gravity became meaningless. Around them, the ship's interior shifted to match the dimensional changes, keeping them safe in their bubble of normal space while they observed the impossible. Sending first data burst back to Earth, Dr. Miller announced from his station. His fingers danced across controls that rippled like water. "The aliens won't be able to intercept these signals. They don't even know this type of communication is possible." Admiral Reed smiled, watching the dimensional flows through the main viewport. "Dr. Thompson, would you like to explain what we're seeing?" "For the record," Thompson nodded, activating her log recorder. "We're currently observing the intersection of 7-dimensional planes. Unlike traditional ships that force their way through dimensions, the Prometheus simply slides between them." She paused, watching colors that had no names flow past the ship. "It's like walking through an open door instead of breaking down a wall." "Movement detected," Parker reported suddenly. "Something big passing through the 6th dimension." They all turned to watch as an Arcturian deep space vessel pushed its way through dimensional space. Compared to the Prometheus, it seemed to be struggling, forcing reality apart instead of working with it. The alien ship didn't detect them, couldn't detect them, as they observed its labored progress. "Their method is so primitive," Miller said, then laughed at the irony. "They're using brute force where finesse is needed." Thompson moved to her main console, checking readings that would revolutionize physics. The human brain naturally understands dimensional folding. When we try to imagine higher dimensions, we instinctively think of folding space. The aliens thought this was a sign of our limited understanding. Instead, it was the key to everything. Reed finished, ready to try full-dimensional translation. Thompson nodded, placing her hands on the control surface. The ship responded instantly, its systems linked directly to human thought patterns. Starting dimensional shift in 3, 2, 1. The Prometheus didn't shake or rumble. Instead, reality outside seemed to pause, then gently fold itself around the ship. Colors blazed and died, space curved in impossible ways, and for a brief moment, the crew could see every dimension simultaneously. "My God," Parker whispered, "we can see everything." They watched as third-dimensional space curved into the 4th dimension of time, which wrapped around the 5th dimension of probability. The 6th dimension, mastered by the aliens with such effort, was merely a stepping stone to the 7th, where all other dimensions met and merged. "Full-dimensional translation achieved," Thompson announced, her voice steadied despite her excitement. "We're now operating completely in 7th-dimensional space. All systems normal." Reed checked his own readings. "Position relative to Earth." "We could be anywhere," Thompson replied. "Or everywhere. In 7th-dimensional space, distance as we understand it doesn't exist. We could return to Earth orbit instantly, or visit the edge of the galaxy just as easily." Miller's console chimed, getting some strange readings. "There's something out here. Other ships, maybe, but not like anything in our databases." "Not alien ships," Thompson said softly. "We're seeing the dimensional echoes of human thought. Our minds have always been able to reach this place. We just didn't know how to bring our bodies along." She smiled. "Until now." The Prometheus drifted in the 7th dimension, humanity's first window into a reality they had always been meant to explore. Below them, in the lower dimensions, alien ships crawled through space like insects climbing a wall, never knowing there was a door just waiting to be opened. "Send the confirmation signal," Reed ordered. "Let Earth know the mission is successful." He looked at his crew, pride evident in his expression. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. The signal went out, traveling through dimensions the aliens had never imagined, carrying humanity's greatest triumph back to Earth. The primitives had done the impossible, and the universe would never be the same. The emergency signal cut through all channels, impossible to ignore. Admiral Reed and his crew had just finished their first successful test flight when the distress call reached the Prometheus. Multiple dimensional rifts detected near the Arcturian colony of New Haven. Lieutenant Parker reported, her hands moving across the shifting control panel. "Their ships can't get close enough to help. The sixth-dimensional drives are making the situation worse." On their main display, they could see the disaster unfolding. Tears in reality itself threatened to tear apart the colony of 3 million Arcturians. The same beings who had laughed at humanity now faced destruction. "Show me the rift patterns," Dr. Thompson commanded. The display changed, revealing complex waves of dimensional energy that looked like a storm made of broken glass. "Their ships are trying to force the rifts closed with pure power. They're only making it worse." Reed stood from his command chair, watching as several Arcturian vessels attempted rescue operations. Each time they approached using their sixth-dimensional drives, the rifts grew larger, more unstable. "They don't understand," Thompson said quietly. "You can't fight dimensional energy. You have to work with it, guide it, like redirecting a river instead of trying to stop it." "Can we help them?" Miller asked from his station. "After how they treated us." Reed's expression hardened. "We're not them. Plot a course for New Haven. Maximum safe speed." The Prometheus moved through dimensional space like a fish through water, covering distances that would take alien ships hours in mere minutes. As they approached the colony, they could see the full scale of the disaster. The colony itself was beautiful, or had been. Crystalline towers reached into space, connected by bridges of pure energy. But now those same towers shook as reality itself threatened to tear them apart. Arcturian ships hovered helplessly at a safe distance, their advanced technology useless against this threat. "They're hailing us," Parker announced. The Arcturian fleet commander sounds desperate. "Put them through," Reed ordered. The commander's image appeared on their screen, her 4 eyes wide with fear. "Human vessel, you must retreat immediately. Your primitive ship will be torn apart by the dimensional energies. We appreciate your desire to help. But we can seal the rifts," Thompson interrupted. "But you need to pull your ships back. Your sixth-dimensional drives are making the tears worse." "That's impossible," the commander began, then stopped as one of the rifts expanded suddenly, swallowing an empty section of the colony. We will pull back. Please, help us." Reed nodded to Thompson. "Show them what the primitives can do, Doctor." Thompson's hands danced across her controls, and the Prometheus moved forward. Where the alien ships had fought against the dimensional currents, they flowed with them. The ship's seventh-dimensional field didn't try to force the rifts closed. Instead, it guided the energy, redirecting it like a gentle hand smoothing wrinkled paper. "First rift is stabilizing," Miller reported. "The energy is responding to our dimensional field. It's like the ship is healing space itself." One by one, the tears in reality began to close. The Prometheus moved through the crisis zone with grace that left the watching alien fleet speechless. Where their mighty ships had failed, this primitive vessel succeeded. "Final rift sealing now," Thompson announced. She looked tired but proud. "Colony structure is stable. No more dimensional bleed detected." The Arcturian commander's image reappeared. Gone was the condescension, replaced by something that looked very much like awe. How How did you? We stopped trying to fight against dimensional space. Reed explained simply. Sometimes the primitive solution is the right one. Your people are safe now, Commander. No need to thank us. As the Prometheus prepared to depart, they received hundreds of messages from the colony. Messages of thanks, of apology, of amazement. But Thompson's attention was on her readings of the sealed rifts. We didn't just save them, she said quietly to Reed. We showed them a completely new way of understanding dimensional space. Their entire approach to dimensional physics will have to change. Reed smiled. Then I'd say this crisis turned out to be the perfect proof of concept. He looked at the grateful colony, then at his proud crew. Set course for Earth. I believe we have a few more skeptics to convince. The Galactic Council chamber looked different now. The same crystalline lights still floated near the ceiling, but the laughter that had once filled this space was replaced by respectful silence. Admiral Reed stood at the central platform again, but this time Dr. Thompson stood beside him. The records show, the head counselor spoke, his blue skin slightly pale, that the human vessel Prometheus not only achieved seventh-dimensional travel, but also saved 3 million lives at the New Haven colony. He paused, looking uncomfortable. We owe humanity an apology. Thompson watched the Arcturian delegation, now sitting quietly in their silver robes. The same beings who had mocked human understanding of physics now held tablets displaying the Prometheus's sensor logs, studying them with intense concentration. Perhaps, the Arcturian ambassador said, standing, we were wrong about primitive thinking. She looked directly at Thompson. Your approach to dimensional physics, it changes everything we thought we knew. Reed stepped forward. We don't want your apology, he said firmly. We want cooperation. Real cooperation this time, not lectures disguised as help. The council chamber erupted in discussion. On the giant screens around them, footage from the New Haven rescue played on repeat. The Prometheus danced through dimensional space, healing tears in reality that the most advanced alien ships couldn't even approach. Dr. Thompson, the head counselor, called out, would you explain to the council how your ship accomplishes what our best scientists thought impossible? Thompson walked to the center of the platform. Behind her, Marcus Gray operated a holographic display showing the Prometheus's unique design. Your ships fight against dimensional space, she began. You see dimensions as barriers to break through. We saw them as pages in a book, something to be turned gently, not ripped apart. The alien scientists in the chamber leaned forward as she continued. Human consciousness naturally understands dimensional folding. When we imagine higher dimensions, our minds create models based on folding space. You thought this was a sign of our limited understanding. She smiled. Instead, it was the key to everything. And the seventh dimension. An alien scientist called out, how did you unlock its secrets? We didn't unlock anything, Thompson replied. We simply stopped trying to force our way through space and started working with it. The seventh dimension was always there, waiting for someone to turn the page instead of tearing it. The head counselor stood, raising his hands for silence. The Council recognizes Earth as a leading authority in dimensional physics. We request that humanity lead a new research initiative, sharing their understanding with all spacefaring races. Reed and Thompson shared a look. This was more than recognition. It was an admission that humanity's approach had been right all along. We accept, Reed said, on one condition. He paused, looking around the chamber. No more holding back technology because you think a species is too primitive to handle it. Every race deserves the chance to find their own path to the stars. The Council voted unanimously to accept. As the session ended, Thompson found herself surrounded by alien scientists, all eager to learn what they had missed in their centuries of research. The Arcturian ambassador approached last, holding out a data crystal. Our complete archives on dimensional physics, she said. No more secrets, no more simplified versions. We hope you can show us where we went wrong. Later, on the observation deck of the human embassy, Reed and Thompson watched ships from 100 worlds move through space below them. Soon, those ships would incorporate human understanding of dimensional physics, moving through space with grace instead of force. They're like children discovering that there's more than one way to open a door, Gray said, joining them at the window. All that advanced technology, and they never thought to simply try turning the handle. Thompson nodded, watching as the Prometheus prepared for another test flight. Its surface rippled with dimensional energy, beautiful and impossible, and perfectly natural. Sometimes the simplest solution is the right one, she said. And sometimes it takes a primitive species to see it. The ship vanished in a gentle fold of space, carrying humanity's greatest achievement into a future where no one would dare call them primitive again. In the end, they hadn't needed to prove their worth with force or advanced technology. They had proven it by seeing what everyone else had missed, that the universe wasn't a barrier to break through, but a book waiting to be read. Admiral Reed smiled, watching alien ships attempt to copy the Prometheus's gentle movements through space. "Well," he said quietly, "I don't hear anyone laughing now."